When we're stuck in the same routine, it can be tough to imagine new year possibilities. But sometimes, a small change, like refreshing your dinner routine, can make a big difference in your day-to-day. Cook Unity is an easy way to reset your meal habits. Each meal is designed with you in mind, with chef-crafted dishes that bring vibrancy and health to your table. See what's possible with a simple reset. Go to cookunity.com/podcast or enter code podcast before checkout for 50% off your first week.
When you're operating at an enterprise level, nothing drives success more than effective team communication. Grammarly for Enterprise enables your company to work smarter and faster. Other AI tools can't quantify impact. With Grammarly, you get measurable results and actionable insights, like tracking key metrics that include brand compliance and readability from their effective communication score. Because when you're able to visualize your team's impact and compare performance against industry benchmarks, you can make data-driven decisions that improve critical business outcomes. So whether you need to streamline messaging between technical and marketing initiatives or cut down on emails between external collaborators, you can trust Grammarly to help employees communicate effectively across the board. Start boosting productivity company-wide with Grammarly. Visit Grammarly.com/enterprise to learn more. That's Grammarly.com/enterprise.
The True Crime Society podcast contains adult themes and violence and is not intended for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. And if you'd like to skip the intro or move to any specific part of the podcast, please refer to the timestamps listed in the episode description. Thank you. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the True Crime Society podcast with Stephanie and Olivia. It is January 9th, 2025. Sorry if you hear my wind chimes. I feel like I have to apologize for something every episode. Last time it was my space heater because I ran out of oil, which has been fixed. I got more oil, which cost me $700 something.
I saw we had heaps of
like
messages from a lot of messages from. I hope you got your oil, Stephanie.
I did. I only had to freeze for one night, and it's like, thank God I was able to get it because it's been a week now, clearly, and we're still in this crazy like Arctic front, polar blast, whatever, polar vortex. The wind is so crazy here. It's so out of control, and it's so cold. It felt the real feel temperature thing was 2 degrees the other night, and the wind is just nonstop. Every day I have to go get my garbage cans that blew away into my yard, and I put them back, and then within a few hours, they're back in the middle of my yard. Like I could put them in my garage or something, but instead I will just torture myself.
I feel like we've been doing this podcast now for 5 years, and every year we talk about, wow, this weather's crazy. So maybe the weather is just crazy from now on, and then that's just how it's going to be.
It's climate change.
Yeah. Well, even we were just talking earlier, there's these horrific fires in California, which seem to have been fairly unexpected. It's obviously like it
came out of nowhere.
A perfect storm of horrible circumstances. Like they had the crazy Santa Ana winds, and it's led to the devastation. Like it's almost apocalyptic, the images that we're seeing.
It's basically like fire winds. Like the wind is just full of fire, starting more fires.
I think it's now been going for maybe 3 days if I've got my timing right, but there's been thousands of homes. At least I think 5 people have died. Even my friend just sent me a message or a recording saying 2 new fires have popped up. So it has been raining here, but when and it's annoying because like it's kind of a really heavy rain, but yesterday when I was reading about the fires, I'm like, I'm so grateful to have the rain.
Because you had the fires a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we've had fires, I think twice in my life that I can remember where it's been quite scary. Like I remember once there was raining ash into the pool, like that's how close it was. Australia is known for having bushfires all the time, but we just are lucky that we've had a few wet years and we don't have to worry about it for this summer. And it's crazy in LA too because I know it's winter, so the temperatures aren't super hot. But which is when fires generally happen dry, in the summer. Yeah, and I have read that the Pacific, and I obviously don't know if this is true, but a comment I read is that the Pacific Palisades fire was started by someone who had a fire in their backyard and they ignored the no burn order. We call it here a total fire ban. So basically if it's bad conditions, windy, hot, whatever, you're not allowed to have any type of fire, like no open flames on your barbecue or anything like that. And so that was obviously the order in the Pacific Palisades, and apparently someone ignored it, and I guess the embers flew and started these fires.
That's
So
horrible. I hope they could figure out who it is. That person
Yeah.
should be sent straight to prison.
yeah, I agree.
Immediately.
But yeah, I guess it's,
It's so
and
selfish.
and we don't know if that is how it happened, but that's what I'm reading. But yeah, I agree.
Even
but
if that's
also,
not, that does happen.
yeah, I know. And I've seen now they think people are just starting fires. It's just like a horrific
What's wrong with
nightmare.
people?
Yeah.
We had a burn ban like over the summer because we were in a pretty bad drought. So we couldn't burn anything. Not that I burn things often, but
I don't know if you
we
have
burned
the
one.
same there, but because I guess Australia is such a fire-prone country, everywhere, when I say everywhere, like in most suburbs, there's a fire warning sign. So they will update it and they'll say like the fire danger today is low, moderate, high, whatever. So basically you need to be prepared, or you don't need to worry too much today. What is going
Yeah,
to
we
happen?
didn't. I mean, where I live, I'm sure they have signs like that. Like I've seen pictures of them around, but specifically where I live, we don't have like dedicated ones because we don't have that.
High of a risk.
High of a risk that often. But we have electronic signs and stuff around town and like on the highway, so they post it there and stuff like that. Like there's a burn ban and all that. We'd have some tiny, tiny fires over the summer, but absolutely nothing compared to what's going on now.
Yeah, I feel like the scariest part too is fire is so unpredictable. Like obviously if the wind changes, it can go the opposite way to what you're expecting, whereas most other weather events you can kind of maybe predict, like if for
And it
example,
seemed
you're
like
going to
there was
have a
like
ton
no
of rain.
warning.
Yeah, no warning. And it just seems
Like it
to have
just
moved.
got bad fast.
There was the video of the two men and the dog in the house. That is like
I could even watch
a
it because
nightmare.
I keep seeing it like on news sites, and whenever I see it, I scroll past it as fast as I can. I don't. It just.
They did
it's
get
so
out safe
scary and
apparently,
horrible.
so it's a good news story in the end. But yeah, like these men are basically in their house and there's just a firestorm. Their entire house is surrounded. They're like
It's
and
like
they were
at the window.
yeah, and they're like the gas is off. Yeah, it would just even I know when it's happened in the past, and it's so traumatizing. Even if like just to be close to a fire, like my kids for years after were like, is it gonna be a fire again? I'm like, no, it's all right, But for these people who have absolutely lost everything, I can't even imagine their recovery, the trauma that they've all suffered. It's horrible.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Hopefully, they can get the fires out soon.
Yeah.
Hopefully, by the time this episode comes out, it's done with, and everyone can start rebuilding.
Yeah, it's just like there's just whole entire neighborhoods wiped out. Where do all these people go? I don't know.
I
It's
saw
crazy.
one post that it was like the area that's burned basically is equivalent to the whole city of Manhattan.
Yeah, I saw that too. And I think it was even bigger than Manhattan, like slightly
A little bigger, yeah.
It's crazy. It's just mind blowing. And I guess unless you're there, you wouldn't even be able to grasp the scale of it. It's horrible.
Yeah, hopefully they can start getting it under control and the winds die down.
So the other thing we mentioned last episode is we asked for episode suggestions, and the episode is only, I've said episode about 10 times in one sentence, but our last episode came out yesterday, so not even 24 hours ago. We've already had so many amazing suggestions. I've noted them all down.
Someone just emailed too.
Yeah, someone just emailed, which is great. So I've saved them all. I'm going to add them to our calendar. We really appreciate it. Keep sending them throughout the year if there's something that you think we haven't covered and you would like us to see, but really appreciate you guys taking the time to send them through. Some really interesting ones too that people have put a lot of thought into about why we would be interested and our listeners would be interested. So we really, really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a huge help because sometimes we've done so many, or there's so many cases that have been covered so many times where it's good to know what people are actually interested in hearing about. So it's big help.
And I know I've mentioned before, like I have I don't want to say a preference because it's horrible to have a crime preference, but I am interested in missing persons cases as my first thought, whereas I know a lot of people, it's just good to have a wider range of opinions and options to choose from for cases that we could discuss with you guys.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so today we are actually going to be talking about 2 cases, and one of them was a recommendation from our patron, Caitlin. So thank you for the recommendation. Like we said, this is why they're helpful. Originally, the theme of the episode was going to be mothers who murdered their children with poison, but a little bit more info came out about one yesterday where it was suspected to be poisoning, but actually wasn't. So one isn't actually poisoning, but we thought it was. So it's just like a moms who murder, but there's some poisoning involved. Not to laugh, but it's just like we planned the whole episode already, and then they're like, "Oh, never mind."
Yeah, all the articles were poisoning, and then like literally yesterday or the day before she went to court and we found out what actually happened. So
And then the one case we're going to talk about too, kind of the longer one, actually involves a mother who poisoned her child because she was suffering with what's suspected to be Munchausen's by proxy, which is, if you're familiar with Gypsy Rose, which I'm sure you are, what her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard, suffered with, and why Gypsy was basically forced to be a wheelchair-ridden, sick child her whole life when she actually wasn't sick.
as a kind of layman's definition of what Munchausen's by proxy is, it's when a parent or a parental figure or someone, basically a caregiver, makes a person sick. Usually, often it's children, I guess, because children don't know how to protect themselves or how to, anything different.
Advocate for
Yeah,
themselves.
advocate for themselves. So it's basically when the carer makes the child or the person sick, sometimes for monetary reasons, sometimes for attention. There's a whole bunch of different reasons why Munchausen's by proxy occurs, but it's basically when a child or someone is made sick when they are not generally unwell for whatever the personal reasons of the carer are.
Yeah.
Before we get into the episode, we're going to hear a word from our sponsor, Prolon. We've spoken about it before. The holidays can leave you feeling and looking depleted. Everyone's so busy, so stressed, so much going on. It's almost like you need a recovery period after the holidays. Prolon works at the cellular level to rejuvenate you from the inside out, supporting enhanced skin appearance and fat loss, and improving energy and focus. Prolon takes out the guesswork and equips you with a science-backed plan, making it a great way to kick off your 2025 health journey. So Prolon's fasting mimicking diet is a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes the body while making cells believe they're fasting. Researched and developed for decades at USC's Longevity Institute and backed by leading US medical centers, Prolon helps promote healthy blood sugar, enhanced skin appearance, fat loss, and improved energy and focus.
It all starts with their 5-day program: snacks, soups, and beverages. No guesswork or planning required, which is a relief after a busy holiday. It's so much easier to stick to a plan when there is actually a plan. We've heard so many great things about Prolon. This is one of the reviews that we saw online. Last January, I did the 5-day program and I feel so much better. Prolon really isn't like any other diet I've tried because it's not a diet. It's truly science. It was so convenient. They sent me everything I needed all in one box. Just in time for the new year, Prolon is offering True Crime Society listeners 15% off their 5-day nutrition program for your post-holiday glow-up when you go to prolonlife.com/TCS. That's PROLON life.com/TCS for 15% off. prolonlife.com/TCS. So, obvious trigger warning. There's some child abuse and child death talked about in this episode. First case we're going to talk about today is the case of Jessica Chandler, who allegedly poisoned her 2 children to death in October 2024. This is the one where we actually found out that she didn't actually poison them. And this one was suggested to us by our Patreon subscriber, Caitlin. So thank you.
A Johnson City woman facing 2 counts of first-degree murder in connection to the deaths of her children appeared in court today. I'm Sarah Diamond.
And I'm Casey Marlar. Jessica Chandler is accused of killing her 1-year-old son and 4-year-old daughter. This after the children's father discovered them unresponsive when he arrived at Chandler's home. News Channel 11's Jayana Scurry joins us. Jayana, what happened in court today?
Sarah, Casey, today in court we learned investigators now suspect Jessica Chandler poisoned her 2 children. A new detail released from the assistant district attorney. Chandler made a verbal confession to a Johnson City police investigator last night. Investigators also found 3 notes in which Chandler implicated herself in the deaths. In court, she was mostly silent as Judge Robert Lincoln read out the details of her case from an arrest warrant.
So on Tuesday, October 29th, 2024, around 2:30 a.m., authorities responded to an emergency call from the home of 28-year-old Jessica Chandler in Johnson City, Tennessee. Jessica's partner, James Neal, was out of town at the time of the incident, as far as we know. When EMS arrived, they found 2 children, Vista, who is 4, and Eli, who is 1, unresponsive inside the home. Paramedics ended up taking them outside of the house just in case this was due to a gas leak. They don't know what's going on. They just know there's 2 unresponsive kids.
And with no signs of trauma, it didn't sound like either. So they were like, something must have gone on too.
Yeah. But unfortunately, both children were pronounced dead at the scene. Jessica was found with self-inflicted superficial cuts to her arms and legs, and she was taken to the hospital. Johnson City Police Department Captain Mike Adams said that they did not try to get Jessica to give any details about what happened at the time and didn't ask her for a statement. He said, "We wanted to get her treatment first and make sure that she is clear-minded before we obtained a statement from her." On Friday, November 1st, Jessica was arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, which is intentional and premeditated murder. She was also charged with 2 parallel counts of felony murder related to the allegation that she committed aggravated child abuse that led to the deaths of children under 8 years old. During her arraignment on November 1st, Washington County Sessions Court Judge Robert Lincoln asked the state if they agreed that the charges were capital offenses. The first Judicial District Attorney General Steve Finney said they could qualify, Your Honor, but that's a subject for down the road. Judge Lincoln said, additionally, based on the fact that the children did not have visible wounds, and because the deceased children had other symptoms, it was suspected that Chandler killed her children by poisoning them. Jessica was then appointed a public defender at her arraignment, and the DA's office said that they believed the likelihood of conviction was high due to letters that she had written admitting to the murders and her confessions to law enforcement that night. The district attorney's office also said that Jessica had been charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault against a first responder due to her allegedly brandishing a knife before being detained and requested a bond of no less than $1 million. The DA's office said, "We believe that she's a threat to herself, to the community, and we believe that she poses a high risk of not showing up to court. The only way that we can guarantee that she's going to be here is if she stays in jail. So the state would believe that a high bond is very appropriate in this case." So Judge Lincoln decided that Jessica should not get bond, saying, "I'm going to hold her without bond. We may, at the preliminary hearing stage, review the bond again, but at this point, I'm holding her without bail due to the totality of everything the court has before it at this point." I feel like some of the sentences they say in court are so long-winded to say like one thing.
So it sounded like at that point, this was back in November, that they had quite a solid case against Jessica. Like they didn't go into much information or much detail about what they had, but it sounded like they were fairly confident.
They seemed confident.
Yeah, confident that what they had was going to be enough.
So despite officials initially saying that they believe Jessica poisoned the children, this week we learned their actual cause of death and the possible motive behind the killings. So on Tuesday, January 7, 2025, Johnson City Police Department criminal investigator Michael Fowler shared that Jessica allegedly killed her children because she could not protect them from James. She allegedly smothered them with a Lilo and Stitch blanket, and the cause of death for both children was asphyxiation by smothering. Investigator Fowler said, "I think there were multiple reasons that came up. One was the previous incident with James and her not being able to protect her children. Just for reference, we don't know what the previous incident was. We haven't been able to find anything. If there was a previous incident, nothing's really said."
All of the reporting, and as we mentioned, this has only happened 2 days ago now, but all of the reporting is quite ambiguous. I don't know if there was an incident that Jessica is alleging and that hasn't been confirmed by the court, which is why no articles are kind of reporting it as such. But there's just all vaguely referred to this incident with James. So maybe once the court documents are made public, there'll be more information about what she actually wrote and what she's alleging, but we don't at this point know what it is.
Yeah, just didn't want you guys to think we were like leaving it out or something.
Yeah.
So the investigator also said she explained a lot about her past with her past life experiences. There were various contributions. So Jessica apparently left notes taped to her cabinets, allegedly implicating herself in the murder of her children. In one of the letters, she detailed an incident involving the sexual assault of her niece by a relative, which made her concerned for her children's safety. One of the letters was read in court and said, "I'm not asking you to know my story. I'm asking you to understand my decision. I've seen a lot in this lifetime. I refuse to let my children bear this cruel world alone. Therefore, I brought my children into this world, and I'm taking my children out of this world."
Just as kind of an observation, I wonder if this sexual assault incident is related to another incident like what that we've just mentioned. I don't know. It seems kind of weird. It seems interesting that they don't go into detail about the alleged incident and then they reveal the sexual assault incident on the niece. I don't know. I wonder if there's some
maybe
connection.
they're connected. Authorities initially believed the children were poisoned due to empty bottles of Tylenol, melatonin, and NyQuil that were found at the scene. So I understand why they thought that. Maybe she did give them some before smothering them, but
Yeah,
hasn't really said.
I haven't seen their full autopsies or full reports, but they have specifically said their causes of death were asphyxiation by smothering. So yeah, they very well could have been medicated and drugged so that she was able to do it easily without them fighting back. But I haven't seen any mention of those drugs or medications being contributing towards their death.
Yeah. Police also said that Jessica pointed out the Lilo and Stitch blanket on a list of property taken from the home. The investigator said she pointed out on the property list that she used a Lilo and Stitch blanket to first suffocate Vista in her bed. This week, her bond was set at $2 million with GPS monitoring restrictions, and her next court date is set for March 31st. The father of the children made a post on Vista's birthday. It just said, "Happy birthday, Vista May. I love you every moment of every day. Here's your moon, and the stars will be out soon." And it's a picture of the sky with the moon and some flowers, it looks like, on her grave, I'm guessing. You could see Eagle Eye's name.
The grave is like a joint headstone. It's just got their names, their dates. Looks like a little elephant engraved on there. Perfect, and it says "Perfect Angels."
They had a joint obituary I can read part of. It says their names, ages, the usual stuff, and then it does say that their parents were James Neal and Jessica Marie Chandler. So I thought that was a little interesting that they would include her, because sometimes they don't, but
and she was arrested very quickly after their deaths, so they knew that she was involved pretty much from the time that the authorities were called. So I did find it interesting that she was still included.
Yeah. It says both children were perfect in every way. Vista loved riding her e-bike, swinging, playing in her sandbox, building forts, and playing with Play-Doh. Eli just started walking and was into everything. He loved eating real food, playing with trucks, flopping around on the bed with his sister, and being outside in the yard. They were inseparable. Yeah, that is really it so far. I'm not sure if we'll find out more about the prior incidents as time goes on. Possibly.
If we do, we'll post the court documents on our Instagram story. I've been looking out for them. They're not released yet, but I'm assuming once they are, there'll be some information about the notes, the scene. I know that we mentioned Jessica had superficial cuts. I have read that they found razor blades on the bathtub and things like that. So she made kind of an attempt to take a life. It seems like it was a very superficial attempt, though.
Yeah. Then the second case we're going to talk about is the murder of 5-year-old Garnett Paul Thompson Spears by his mother, Lacey, who injected him with high levels of sodium. Lacey suffered from Munchausen syndrome by proxy, as we said, like Gypsy Rose's mother, Dee Dee. This case, it's a little bit older, but it was very high profile at the time. So Lacey was born on October 16th, 1987, to parents Tina and Terry. She and her 2 siblings, Daniel and Rebecca, were raised in Decatur, Alabama. On the surface, Lacey seemed to have an idyllic life. According to an article by Loha.com, it's a quote, "She had an American Girl doll, loved Lifetime movies, and the syrupy comfort of her favorite show, the drama Seventh Heaven, about a minister, his stay-at-home wife, and their 7 children, where problems were presented and resolved in 60 minutes. I did a Seventh Heaven rewatch semi-recently. And it's just so funny. If anybody wants to talk to me about Seventh Heaven, feel free, because
that's one show I never ever watched.
It's so cheesy and bad sometimes that it's so funny. But not to go off topic. Growing up, Lacey's best friend was Jessica Lee Kyle, and they'd been best friends. They'd been friends for years. Jessica recalled their first interaction. She said, "She was hogging the monkey bars and I spit on her glasses. Our teacher made us make up, and ever since we've been best friends." Jessica said about their friendship, she'd collect Beanie Babies and American Girl dolls. With her American Girl doll and my regular baby doll, we'd act like we were the baby's mothers. We would take care of them as if they were our own kids. She took it to a more extreme level than I did. Even if she went to Walmart or out and about, she'd take the doll everywhere. It was something that gave her comfort. Jessica would later say their friendship started to change in middle school, and Lacey told Jessica's mother that she was being abused at home. Jessica said, "I remember my mom being on the front porch with Lacey and my mom telling me to go inside because there was an important phone call that she had to make. Jessica's mother called the Alabama Department of Human Resources that day, which is the equivalent of CPS. Lacey would later tell other friends about the alleged abuse and would tell them that she had at least one abortion and that she suffered from anorexia. One day, she showed up to the church with an ankle brace and told everyone that she fell while cheerleading. So it seems like she initially had just regular Munchausen's, where it's about yourself, and then eventually that developed into by proxy. A former teammate of Lacey's named Paula Sandlin said that she fell because she felt weak because she hadn't been eating, and that later that year, Lacey had been telling people that she was anorexic. Lacey once told people that she had not eaten for 3 days, but then someone replied that they actually saw her eating a hot dog the day prior, and then Lacey changed her story to say that that was the only thing she'd eaten in 3 days. When Lacey was 14, she told people that she was pregnant. Paula said, "I said, do your parents know? What are you going to do?" I didn't believe her. She didn't look pregnant, but I didn't want to call her a liar in case there was some bit of truth to it. Lacey would eventually tell people that she had gone to Birmingham's Caraway Methodist Medical Center to get an abortion. But when a friend challenged the story and said abortions weren't done at that hospital, which closed in 2008, she replied, "Oh, I went to Florida." These stories seemed so wild to her friends that during high school, some of them planned an intervention in an attempt to confront Lacey about what was true and what wasn't true. There's not a lot of information about the alleged abuse that she suffered. This is a quote from LOHUD. The Journal News is not publishing certain details of Spears' reported allegations against others due to their sensitive nature, and that there have been no public findings about their truthfulness. Alabama social service officials would neither confirm nor deny an existing case on Spears, citing confidentiality policies.
Yeah, so basically they're saying that all these allegations she's made, there's no legal proof that any of it was true, and that's why there's not much reported on it.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2008, when Lacey was around 21, she was living in a 2-bedroom apartment with her sister Rebecca in Alabama. A man named Chris Hill lived in the same complex. To get to her apartment, Lacey had to walk past Chris's. He has made some jokes about her and about what he thought of her before they met. He said, "We used to make fun of her, called her the predator. She was quiet. You really have to stop and say, hey, for her to talk to you. She was very cold or very antisocial." He said, "She was another breed altogether, like nothing I've ever dealt with before." So despite this, one day, Lacey knocked at Chris's door to ask a favor. He said, "She asked me if I'd put a baby crib together for her." Lacey had been caring for a friend's baby. The baby was named Jonathan Strain. She would often keep the baby overnight and on weekends, I've read, because the mother had to work, so Lacey would apparently care for this baby. She started telling some of her friends that John was her own child. Jonathan's mother, Autumn, found out about this and confronted Lacey, and Lacey apologized. So there's this kind of unusual behavior from, obviously, even as a teenager, but that's very unusual behavior, telling someone that a baby you're caring for is your own child.
Yeah, a red flag for sure.
Unhinged, yeah. So this episode of the True Crime Society podcast is brought to you by Graza. Everyone knows how much we love our food. We talk about it a lot. Lately, what's taken our food to the next level is the flavor of Graza. That's our olive oil of choice. It's top-notch, extra virgin olive oil at an affordable everyday price. Even it's funny because my daughter was asking, who have you got as a sponsor? And I told her Graza, and she's like, wow, that's a good one. Graza is always fresh, never blended, and made from one kind of olive from one place. Graza has not one but 2 olive oils that come in a super fun squeeze bottle for ridiculously easy sizzling, drizzling, and everything in between. Sizzle, their everyday cooking oil, can handle the heat with a smoke point of 410 degrees Fahrenheit and is great for baking, sauteing, and anything that you want to cook. They also have Drizzle, which is a super punchy, flavorful finishing oil that can be used to whip up a salad dressing, dip a baguette into, or even drizzle over ice cream.
I'm just learning how to cook more, so I really love the bottles, that they're squeeze bottles, and it has a little squeeze top instead of the typical twist off. It made it so much easier to use while I'm kind of trying to scramble to keep up following the recipe while things are hot on the stove. So I really love that, and I also like that they're just labeled sizzle and drizzle. That makes it so much easier for me to understand because, like I said, I'm not like a chef. I'm just learning here, so they make it very easy, and it was great. I totally recommend the Graza starter kit. You'll get 10% off your first order of any olive oil on their site. You get the 2 squeeze bottles of the olive oil, the sizzle and the drizzle that we were talking about. Plus, they include 2 refill cans. So if you run out of olive oil, there's no need to buy a whole new bottle. You just refill the one that you have. So that's eco-friendly. We love that. You can also find the bottles and the refill cans on shelves at Whole Foods or Target near you. So you don't always have to order. You can just run out to the store and buy it as well. So degraza.co and use TCS to get your 10% off your Graza starter kit and get to cooking your next chef quality meal.
Chris said, I started putting it together, as in the crib, and she started asking me personal questions. I think she was lonely. I hadn't seen anybody go up to her apartment in some time, and I figured she needed some attention. So in the days after he put together the crib, the attention turned to sex. Chris said they became neighbors with benefits. He said we hooked up for a little while. So the arrangement went on for a few months, and Lacey was the one to end it. Soon after that, she told Chris that she was pregnant. They kind of decided to stay together. They even talked about getting married, discussed baby names. She said, I like Garnett. And he said, no, let's keep looking. Chris said, we were acting like we were a couple. I was trying to get her to marry me and see if we could make it work. Chris said that out of the blue, Lacey changed very suddenly. He said she went from wanting to be married to saying he's not your kid. All of a sudden, she just acted like I didn't exist and she just ended it. She just wanted to be a mother and not have a father involved. So it appears that Chris kind of just let the matter drop. He let Lacey go and do her own thing. She gave birth to a boy she named Garnett Paul Thompson Spears on December 3rd, 2008. Garnett weighed 6 pounds 14 ounces at birth. She still lived in the same complex as Chris, which is so weird to me that like they see each other
Neighbors.
all the time. He would see Lacey and the baby. I guess he took her at face value that when she said it wasn't his baby in the end. I don't know. It's just a weird situation.
Neighbors with no benefits now.
Yeah. Chris said we'd already split up and she was saying he wasn't mine and to leave her alone. I only saw her and him when she would get out of the car to walk upstairs. I would hear her car door shut and hear him cry, and then I would look out of my window to try and get a look at him. So Lacey apparently threatened to call police if Chris approached her and the baby, so that may explain partly why he didn't pursue trying to have contact with who may have been his son. But anyway, she seemed to cut him right off.
Mm-hmm.
Lacey would soon tell anyone who asked her that her soulmate and Garnett's daddy was a police officer named Blake who died in a car accident. So she made up this whole other story about Blake, who never existed.
A lot of red flags here.
Yeah. Soon after Garnett was born, Lacey started making posts on social media about his alleged poor health. She said that during his first year of life, they went to the hospital 23 times. There's a post, obviously this is quite a while ago now, so a lot of the links and posts are down, but there's an actual screenshot of the post. It's the baby in hospital with looks like a cast. It says an IV on his foot held with hospital tape, so he's got his leg all bandaged up. She wrote, my sweet angel is in hospital for the 23rd time. Please pray he gets to come home soon. So there's all this documented online. Obviously, at the time, she was very active on social media about it. Lacey would tell doctors and nurses that Garnett could not keep any food down. Despite this, though, nurses were able to feed him without any problem, which, again, I can't unbelieve. Like we've spoken about in the DJ and Gypsy episode, these people get lucky that medical professionals take their word for what is happening, despite...
I don't even understand how it happens. It's
yeah.
insane.
So nurses were able to feed him fine. He kept the food down. He was fine. But despite this, he ended up having a feeding tube placed in his abdomen. A woman named Ginger Dabbs Anderson became friends with Lacey and tried to help her. Ginger said that she, as in Ginger, not Lacey, fed Garnett foods including potatoes and okra, and she never once used his feeding tube. So all these people, she was just still able to slip through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
In 2010, so when Garnett was around 2, Lacey and Garnett moved from Alabama to Florida to live with Lacey's grandmother. In 2012, she moved to Chestnut Ridge in New York with Garnett. This seems to have been kind of a commune type situation. It's called a fellowship type of community where they all lived kind of together, helped each other out, kind of lived a not off the grid lifestyle because it wasn't, but a more community-based lifestyle. Lacey made a blog titled Garnett's Journey. It only had 2 posts. On September 18th, 2012, she wrote, "We have together survived nearly 365 days, a complete year without Blake, my soulmate, and Garnett's daddy. The past year has been the hardest year of my life." So she's alleging by that date that Garnett was around 3-ish when his dad died. They'd been around for all these years. It's a wild lie because obviously she had nothing to back it up with. But that was her story that she was telling everyone online.
Mm-hmm.
Lacey's friends were confused about the mention of this, quote, soulmate that they had never seen. Her friend Riley Vaughn said Blake was never in any of the pictures when Garnett was born, but she was crying about him on Facebook posts, saying he was the love of her life and that he was always there for her. That's why I stopped Facebooking her. I was done with her after that, after I realized most of the stuff that she was saying just wasn't true. So Lacey would tell people different stories involving Blake. She said they had suffered 2 miscarriages and a stillbirth before Garnett was born. Lacey would also tell Garnett, so a little tiny child, that Blake had been reincarnated as an owl, and she filled their 1-bedroom apartment with decorative owls, owl figurines, owl postcards, owl towels. Neighbours have said that there was a ton of owl kind of memorabilia in their apartment, and I guess that is why. While she was living in the fellowship community, Lacey accused 2 of the men in the group of making unwanted sexual advances towards her. One of the accusations caused a man and his wife to leave the group. The man spoke out later. His name's Ricardo Alves, and he actually moved to Brazil after these allegations. She said, "She accused me in the executive circle at the fellowship of sexual harassment. It's not true, but the executive circle said it's better for you to leave before this becomes serious. Me and my wife left without having a chance to defend myself."
Damn.
Lacey told members of the fellowship that Garnett would go days without eating and that he needed a tube in his abdomen for his feeding because he was considered a failure to thrive case. And this is what children who are unable to gain weight, that's the diagnosis that they are given, is failure to thrive. And I've also seen with elderly people as well, when they don't get enough nutrition and that causes them to pass away, it's basically they're not getting enough nutrition from eating and drinking.
Yeah.
A female friend spoke to the media. She said that she lived off-site but was involved with the fellowship. She said, in terms of Lacey, she said she had to wake him up a couple of times through the night and feed him through the tube. She basically said he doesn't obtain the same nutrients that we get, and that's why she has to feed him at night. The woman said she was very careful about what he ate. Everything was organic. She said he didn't eat anything out of a can or a box. The fellowship members thought that the feeding tube was strange because at community events they saw Garnett eat food with his mouth, eat solid food. They said he seemed to have a very healthy appetite. They also said that he came off as very lively and energetic and that they would have thought he was a perfectly healthy child, and the only reason they didn't was because of what Lacey was telling them. So one fellowship member said he had runny noses, a fever every once in a while, but nothing unusual. Most of the time he'd be bouncing around the house and happy. So Garnett started school in 2013. There's a cute photo of him with like a chalkboard behind him. He's dressed in like a long sleeve shirt, pants. He looks very happy. It says Garnett's first day of school, October 12th, 2013. Favorite food, I think it says bananas and yogurt. Favorite color is red. And he's got his school bag hanging off the side. Like he just looks like a normal, happy, healthy child. A friend of Lacey's said it broke Lacey and Garnett's heart for him to go to school every day. I remember being on the phone with her when Garnett was heading to school, and I heard Garnett say, "No, Mama." He suffered separation anxiety and he didn't like being away from her any more than she liked being away from him. So it does seem like they were quite codependent on each other. It was only those two, which is typical of children that age anyway. But for them, it was even more emphasized because it literally was only those two for their whole entire lives.
Well, that's why it's messed up. Is like he's so young, he can't even think for himself or think anything of what his mom is doing to him. He just trusts her.
So Garnett's alleged health issues continued for his whole entire life. In January 2014, Lacey made 28 posts on Facebook about his health in 11 days. He initially started out being, minorly sick with a cold or flu to having seizures, and then he was put on and taken off a breathing tube. Lacey kept making posts about his health and his sodium levels. On January 17th, Lacey posted photos of Garnett and said that he was well enough to run laps around the ward. Despite that, just 2 days later, on January 19th, he was airlifted by helicopter from Nyack Hospital to Maria Ferrari Children's Hospital in Valhalla, New York. So 2 days' time, he's deteriorated so much that he had to be airlifted to another hospital. A very, very quick deterioration. After he was airlifted, Lacey rushed to the hospital. When she arrived there, she was stopped by a doctor who had conducted testing on Garnett. The doctor told her it was metabolically impossible for Garnett to have produced the extreme sodium levels found in his system. There were 2 witnesses to this conversation, and the doctor told her something isn't right. The normal range of sodium is 135 to 145 milliequivalents per litre. Garnett's levels had surged to the mid-180s. A doctor told Lacey, in the presence of these other witnesses, that it was the highest sodium level he'd ever seen. After this occurred, Lacey called one of the neighbours and asked her to get rid of Garnett's feeding bags from her home. The neighbour removed the pouch and called police, who recovered the bag, and when they examined the bag, it was found to have extreme concentrations of sodium. Police...
I wonder, just thinking while I'm listening, I always wonder, does she believe her own lies? Part of me is yes, but then clearly she knew what she was doing was wrong and not correct if she's telling someone to go throw out the evidence. Essentially, it's not like she was no, I'm doing this, I'm saving his life, I'm doing the right thing. She knew what she was doing was wrong.
I wonder if her end goal was to kill him, or if she just
well, maybe, because then she'd get the ultimate attention. Then if her child passed away, she'd get all that attention that she's been seeking and sympathy.
Yeah. So police also took food from Lacey's apartment along with her computer and cell phone. So I just wanted to kind of make a note too that this was all happening in 2014. This is kind of, I feel around the peak time for mummy bloggers. Things like this on social media would have gotten a lot of attention at the time. I just feel like this was a peak time, and she kind of was trying to take advantage of the attention that she was getting.
Yeah.
When Garnett was dying in hospital, Chris, his father, the one from Alabama, found out about the situation. He had not heard from Lacey for years, so he sent her a Facebook friend request to try and get information. On January 22 that year, she said that Garnett was going to be removed from life support. She said that he had been declared brain dead, and she wrote on social media, "His soul is already with the angels. I'm not ready to let him go." And the final post she made about Garnett's health and his passing away was on January 23rd, where she said, "Garnett the Great journeyed onward today at 10:20 a.m. Chris obviously found out pretty quickly about what had happened to Garnett, and he made a Facebook post that day. He said, "This is my other son, Garnett." So obviously he's had another son after Garnett. "This is my other son, Garnett, and he is 5 years old. I never got to see him because his mum just up and moved to New York. Well, Friday he had some severe seizures that caused his brain to swell and is now brain dead and on life support. And even though I don't get to see him, I feel like he's been with me for this whole time. I'm not going to lie, I cried for hours when I found out, and this will continue to hurt till the day I die." So after Garnett died, Lacey left the fellowship community and she moved to Kentucky to live with her parents. There was a police investigation underway very quickly following Garnett's death into why he passed away. There was a camera in Garnett's hospital room, and law enforcement watched all the footage. Basically, they saw nothing untowards happening in the actual hospital room, but they did see that Lacey would take Garnett into the bathroom multiple times, and there was no cameras or footage able to be gained from the bathroom. A friend of Lacey's also told authorities that Lacey had given Garnett 100 ounces, or almost 3 litres of water from her own drink bottle before he died. Lacey said numerous times that he was very thirsty and that she kept giving him water. It's so crazy to me that the doctor confronted her and said something's not right here, and that she was still allowed to be alone and feeding her son in the hospital room.
Yeah.
I feel like there surely should have been more surveillance or something. If there was an investigation going on and the doctor had suspicions, why was more not
maybe
done?
it just wasn't fast enough, because it's who's the doctor to be no, you can't see your kid.
Yeah, you can't give him
probably have
water.
to report it to the police, and I don't know.
So 1 week after Garnett died, Lacey accepted Chris's friend request, and she did tell him at that time that Garnett was his son, despite her kind of flip-flopping back and forth and saying it was, then it wasn't. On February 18th, she said, "I need you right now. This is our son," in capitals.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I know she's mentally ill, but I'm just this woman
So
is out
dramatic.
of control.
It's like a soap opera. That's what she's trying
That's
to.
what she thinks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The next day, February 19th, she texted him, "Chris, you know we will always be a part of each other's lives for the rest of our time here. We have a son together. We may not have worked out, but we both need each other. Friends at the very least. Do you agree?" Other messages she sent.
You're the one who told him, like, it's not your kid, up and left, and we're just like, get fucked, Chris. Like,
other messages she sent to Chris include, "I want G back. I feel okay at moments, and then it hits me like a 1,000-pound weight." And she also texted him, "I want to die." She spoke to Chris about the police investigation. She knew it was going on. She said to him on February 20th, "I know they are looking at me. I would never hurt my baby." Chris, so obviously this was all being reported in the news. It was kind of a suspicious death. There was reports of a police investigation. There was even reports of assault connection into why Garnett had died. Chris asked Lacey about this, and he said, "Did they tell you about assault deal?" Lacey wrote, "What? Salt? What does this mean?" Just in disbelief. So she's
like, salt? Never heard of it.
Yeah, how? Why? Chris also asked her why she lied about Blake, this made-up person being Garnett's father. She said, "I wanted to protect Garnett. Everything I did or said was to protect G." So when police searched Lacey's phone, they found that she had been searching for ways to take her own life. She had searched for information on overdosing on sleeping pills and self-injecting insulin. She searched for stories about suicide, and she searched whether overdosing on pills would be effective. She also conducted numerous searches on insulin, including insulin poisoning with suicidal intent and the story of Kenneth Barlow, the first documented case of murder by insulin. Lacey also searched dangers of high sodium and hypernatremia, which is high levels of sodium in the blood, and she searched that several days before Garnett was admitted to the Nyack Hospital. So she's another...
So she was probably, even though she was searching, like, info on overdosing and taking her own life, was it really for how to take Garnett's life and just make it seem like an accident? Yeah.
Could have been either.
Yeah. I just feel like she probably wouldn't actually kill herself. She's the type that would almost kill herself and then be like, "I've just been so distraught," like as more of a victim story, but wouldn't actually want to kill herself.
It's interesting that both the cases we've discussed today, both the mothers either had
a lame suicide attempt.
Yeah, like made a half-assed attempt at suicide by searching, and the other one just made some cuts. And, you know, it's just interesting that they know that's what they should likely be doing, and that's the amount of grief that they should have.
But they don't really want to.
No. In June 2014, around 6 months after Garnett died, Lacey surrendered to police following a grand jury indictment. She was charged with second-degree murder and first-degree manslaughter. The following year, April 2015, Lacey was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison for Garnett's death. The maximum sentence was 25 years to life, and the judge spared her that as he said she hoped she would get help in prison. Lacey gave no reason or apology for why she ended up killing Garnett, and when asked by the judge whether she'd like to say anything, Lacey said, "No, sir." She displayed no emotion at the moment of sentencing. The judge said to her, "One does not have to be a psychologist to realize that you suffer from a mental illness known as Munchausen by proxy. I hope you, over the next few years, come to grips with your condition. By not imposing the maximum sentence, I'm combining your punishment with something that you really did not exhibit towards your son, namely mercy." The DA and the judge said that Lacey kept Garnett sick and then killed him so she could get sympathy in the mummy blogs and online posts. The DA said Garnett Spears should be in school today and he's not because his mother murdered him. He had a right to grow up and a right to grow old, and she stole that from him. The DA also said throughout his short life, Garnett Spears was forced to suffer through repeated hospitalizations, unneeded surgical procedures, and ultimately poisoning with salt, all at the hands of one person who should have been his ultimate protector, his mother. Using the child's illnesses to self-aggrandize herself, Lacey Spears' actions directly led to her son's tortured death. Lacey was called a calculated child killer, and the prosecutor said her actions were nothing short of torture. The motive is bizarre, the motive is scary, but it exists. So Lacey is eligible for parole no earlier than June 2034, and she will only be 47 years old. That is crazy to me. That she inflicted years and years of torture on her son that ended up killing him, and she's still going to be eligible for parole when she's 47 years old. We're basically midlife. She'll be able to live the rest of her life.
Yeah, like she could still have a semi-normal life.
Yeah, it's like, I just feel like that. I know the judge said that he showed mercy towards her in the hope that she would get help, but I just feel like being able to be out of prison at 47 is not justice for Garnett.
I wonder if she actually did get help, if she realizes what she did was wrong, or if she's just going to come out and be a fucking menace again.
Yeah. I did find a study with some interesting stats on Munchausen's by proxy. They said that they did a study of 128 cases. 55 of those suffered from Munchausen by proxy alone. 15 of those involved poisoning and 15 involved suffocation. 43 of the cases suffered more than one type of abuse. The majority of children who were involved in Munchausen's by proxy cases were aged under 5, and the median age was 20 months. And on 85% of occasions where there's Munchausen's by proxy involved, the perpetrator was the child's mother. So I feel like those stats kind of go along with what we were saying. It often involves younger children because they don't know any better. They trust the mother. That's why I feel like Gypsy and Dee Dee's case is a little bit unusual because the child was a lot older and still kind of went along with what the mother was saying. But it does happen when the children are younger because they're easier to control and manipulate most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, with Gypsy, it started when she was little and just went on and on and on.
Yeah.
So she didn't really know any better. But I also wonder, like, it's always women. Are there cases where men have Munchausen by proxy? You never really hear about it.
Well, I guess 85%, indicates that there are...
But that just is the mother. Could it be like the grandmother?
Or a
the
caregiver
aunt?
or someone. Yeah. I actually, off the top of my head, could not think of one case. I'm not doubting they do exist, but I can't think of one high-profile case off the top of my head where a male or a father has been involved in Munchausen's by proxy.
Yeah. Makes me wonder if this is just like a theory in my head that's not scientific at all, and someone will probably tell me I'm dumb. But since women generally feel more of the like mental load with caring for children, just as like a stereotype, if that is why it happens so much more with women, maybe they're very... She did it like her whole life, but sometimes I wonder if like they feel very overwhelmed, and then you notice like when you're sick or you fake sick, like you get all this nice attention, like you kind of get to relax, people are nicer to you, people are more willing to do things for you. And then when your child is sick, you don't even have to be the sick one. It's the same thing where everyone else is taking care of your child, you're getting all this attention, everyone's being nice to you, nobody expects you to be at home like cooking food and doing house chores, like everyone's like, oh, how can we help you, how can we do this? And I wonder if people just almost enjoy that. Like, I know it's more a mental illness, but I wonder if it kind of starts that way.
I do find it interesting too that in a lot of Munchausen's by proxy cases, it involves mothers or women who are single parents, like Dee Dee was, Lacey was, and I feel like a lot of the time
maybe they feel overwhelmed.
Or a lot of the times it's by choice, so they can continue to enact these, horrible things on their children because no one is going to stop them.
That's true, because Lacey and I do remember Dee Dee, like they both kind of were just like, fuck off, like get away to the father of the kid.
But yeah, even like I've looked to see if there's any stats on male perpetrators of Munchausen by proxy. There's just not as much out there. Obviously, women are the majority of perpetrators in these type of cases.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've tried to look more in the science about it before when we like did Gypsy, and there are some people who specialize in it, but there's still like not a ton of information about why this happens.
Yeah, and I know sometimes there's often debate too, as if it in, especially probably more recent cases where there's platforms like GoFundMe and social media, if a lot of these cases are Munchausen's by proxy, or if it is like actual genuine fraud where people just want the money or want whatever.
True.
It's just an interesting discussion that has, like, obviously this is something that's been going on forever, these types of cases, but in the last few decades there's probably been a shift into a reasoning as to why people may make their children sick, or there's more financial reason to gain and social status, I guess, for some people.
I do think a lot of it has to come from just people are kinder to you, people don't expect as much from you. Even with Gypsy Rose, like her mother, they got free vacations, they got a house.
Free house, yeah.
Everyone is just handing you things and essentially trying to make your life so much easier that it must seem good, like a vacation.
Yeah.
But obviously you have to be mentally ill to some extent to be okay with making your child or someone suffer in that way, just so that you could benefit by having a easier life.
I do find it interesting that Lacey didn't make a statement about why or what her motive was or an apology or anything like that. Like often when people are sentencing, she would have, along the lines of, I didn't mean to, I thought I was doing the best for him. But she has given nothing, no reasoning, no motive about why she did what she did. I would be interested to hear more about that.
Yeah. I want to know like what work she's done, if she's now like aware of what she did and why she did it, or But like I said, she knew what she was doing was wrong when she told someone to dispose of the evidence. It's not like she was just blindly believing that her child really was sick.
Oh, exactly, and that she was doing the right thing, and she knew better than all the doctors and nurses.
So she did have some awareness.
Absolutely.
Maybe she'll do a tell-all when she's out of prison.
Yes.
Gotta wait, what, 10 more years?
Yeah, pretty much. I think even 9 years now. I don't know exactly what
9
date she'll get out. I think it's June. So yeah,
June 12th. No earlier than June 12th.
So there was, even though we mentioned that she didn't make any statement in court, after she went to jail, she did do an interview with CBS in 2016 where basically she just goes through what happened with Garnett, what her role in the situation was. She denied to CBS that she has Munchausen's by proxy. She is apparently adamant that Garnett's death was a medical mistake by the hospital. It's an interesting clip if you want to watch it. I feel like it's a lot of big noting by her, just trying to control the narrative. But she did go into some more information about the feeding tubes and things like that. It's nothing really new. It's basically just her denying that she did anything wrong, where it's pretty clear that she did.
So it's good to see that she's really growing and healing and in prison and taking accountability.
It was obviously nearly 10 years ago, this CBS interview, but it's, interesting that even though after she was still convicted, there was still all this evidence against her that she denied it all.
Yeah, not surprising, I guess.
Now to a case that has intrigued and puzzled many people. Lacey Spears, a Rockland County mother, sentenced to 20 years to life in prison for poisoning her son to death with salt. Spears spoke exclusively with 48 Hours' Troy Roberts.
How do you get through the day?
One moment at a time. I ask God to just carry me through each moment, each hour, each day.
What is your favorite memory of him?
I miss that he would wake me up during the middle of the night just to talk to me, just to tell me that he loved me.
And people believed you had a hand in it, that he's not here because of you.
I took him to the hospital for help. If I had wanted to harm him, why would I take him to a hospital seeking help? I didn't hurt him. I didn't kill my son. I didn't murder him. I didn't poison him. I didn't harm him in any way. I wanted to know what was going on with him because he was in pain and he was suffering and he was hurting and nobody could explain to me what was going on.
So that's it for this episode. Everything will be on the blog at truecrimesocietyblog.com if you want to read more about the cases or see our sources and things like that. You can follow us on Instagram. That's where we post the most updates and follow any ongoing cases and crimes and current stories. And if you want to follow our personal accounts, mine is _. Olivia's TCS Olivia if you want to see what we're up to. And if you want more content from us, check us out on Patreon. We do all the episodes ad-free, and we do weekly bonus episodes, so you'd be getting 2 episodes a week. We also put out the main episodes a day earlier, and there's just like a whole Patreon community that is fun to chat with. So check us out on there. All the usual stuff. If you can leave us some nice comments and reviews and share the podcast to your Instagram stories or share it with a friend or whatever. Make sure you're subscribed or following on whatever platform. And that's that. Hopefully you guys have done all those things by now because I say it every episode. And that's it. So thank you guys for listening. Stay safe out there. Peace out.